The morning sun streamed through the windows of Liv Morgan's Brooklyn apartment as she stared at the email that would change everything. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the words again. "We'd like to offer you the position of lead anchor for American Morning." After 10 years of grinding through local news stations, writing stories that never saw airtime, and fighting for every shred of respect in an industry that seemed determined to keep her down, she'd finally made it. "Max," she called out, her voice cracking with emotion. "Max, come here." Her boyfriend emerged from their bedroom, his dark hair still tousled from sleep. Even half awake, Maxwell Carter carried himself with the practiced grace of an actor, though his biggest role to date had been a recurring character on a cable police procedural that got cancelled after 2 seasons. "What's up, babe?" He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder to read the screen. She felt his body stiffen almost imperceptibly. "They want me for American Morning. Can you believe it?" Liv turned to face him, searching his eyes for the excitement she felt bubbling up inside her. "This is everything we've been working for." Max's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "That's amazing, Liv. Really amazing." He pulled away, running a hand through his hair, a tell she'd learned meant he was processing something uncomfortable. "How did this happen?" The question carried an edge that made Liv's stomach tighten. "What do you mean, how?" "I've been filling in as a correspondent for months. My segments have great ratings, and Jessica's leaving for the West Coast." Right. Max held up his hands. "I just meant, it's a huge jump. From correspondent to lead anchor. People usually work years for that kind of promotion." "I have worked years," Liv said, her joy starting to curdle. 10 years, Max. You've seen how hard I work." "Of course, babe. Of course." He kissed her forehead, but it felt patronizing now. "You deserve this. I just hope." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Hope what?" "Nothing. It's nothing." He forced a brighter smile. "We should celebrate. Dinner tonight? I'll call Marcus and Sarah, maybe Craig and Beth. They'll want to hear the news." Liv nodded, though something in her gut warned against it. She'd learned to trust that instinct. It had served her well in journalism, helping her sense when there was more to a story than what appeared on the surface. But this was Max, who'd been by her side for 3 years, who'd held her through rejections and celebrated her small victories. Max, who'd been increasingly distant lately as his own auditions led nowhere. Later that evening, at the trendy restaurant Max had chosen, Liv watched as he regaled their friends with the story of her promotion. Something subtle shifted in his retelling, the emphasis on how sudden it was, the meaningful pause when he mentioned her meetings with David Porter, the executive producer. "Dave's been incredibly supportive," Liv interjected, noting how Max's jaw tightened at her use of the producer's first name. "He really championed my segments to the network." "I'm sure he has been," Beth said, shooting a quick glance at Craig. There was something knowing in their exchange that made Liv's skin crawl. "What's that supposed to mean?" Liv asked, her reporter's instinct firing up. "Nothing." Beth backpedaled quickly. "Just, you know how things can look in this industry. People talk." "What people? What are they saying?" Liv's voice had taken on the sharp edge she usually reserved for confrontational interviews. The table fell into uncomfortable silence. Marcus suddenly became very interested in his wine glass, while Sarah studied the menu as if it contained the secrets of the universe. Max placed his hand over Liv's, but she pulled away. "It's probably nothing," Max said soothingly, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Just industry gossip. You know how it is, when someone rises quickly, people want to find explanations." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Liv looked around the table, at these people she'd considered friends, and saw it in their faces. They'd already decided what kind of story this was, and she wasn't the hero in their version. "Excuse me," she said, standing abruptly. I need some air. Outside, leaning against the restaurant's brick wall, Liv pulled out her phone and opened her contact list. Her finger hovered over David Porter's name as pieces started falling into place, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms at the network, the sudden cold shoulder from female colleagues who'd been friendly before, the way Max had been asking more questions about her late-night production meetings. A text from Max lit up her screen, "Come back inside, babe. Don't let gossip ruin your big night." But Liv knew better. This wasn't just gossip, this was character assassination. And as she stood there, her dream job turning to ashes in her mouth, she couldn't shake the feeling that the knife in her back had been planted by the one person who was supposed to be celebrating her success. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning of a war, one that would test every journalistic instinct she'd honed over the past decade, and force her to decide what she was willing to sacrifice in the name of truth, ambition, and revenge. The whispers became a roar faster than Liv could have imagined. Within a week of the dinner, her inbox filled with concerned emails from network executives about maintaining the network's image. Female colleagues who'd once praised her reporting now walked past her desk without acknowledgement. Even the cleaning staff seemed to avoid her eyes. One morning, she found a post-it note stuck to her computer screen, "Some of us had to earn it the hard way." The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. She crumpled it in her fist, fighting back tears that threatened to ruin her camera-ready makeup. "Everything okay?" David Porter appeared at her cubicle, his presence drawing stares from nearby desks. The executive producer looked genuinely concerned, which only made things worse. "Fine," Liv replied curtly. "Just reviewing the morning segments." David shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, Liv, maybe we should talk about the situation." "My office?" The walk to his office felt like a walk of shame. Every pair of eyes followed them, and Liv could practically hear the thoughts behind them. "See? What did we tell you?" Inside his office, David didn't sit behind his desk but took one of the guest chairs beside her. "The board is concerned about the rumors," he said without preamble. "They're lies," Liv said, her voice trembling with anger. "You know they're lies. You've seen my work, my ratings." "I know," David interrupted gently. "But perception matters in this industry. And right now, the perception is that I slept my way to the top." Liv finished bitterly. "And who exactly is pushing that perception, David? Because these rumors had to start somewhere." David's expression tightened. "Several sources have come forward, claiming intimate knowledge of inappropriate meetings. Late-night encounters. Detailed accounts." Liv felt the blood drain from her face. "Sources? What sources?" "They're anonymous, but they seem credible. Industry insiders. People who would know your schedule, your movements." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Only one person knew her schedule intimately enough to fabricate believable lies. Only one person had been asking increasingly pointed questions about her late-night production meetings. "I need to make a call," Liv said, standing abruptly. She found an empty conference room and dialed Max's number with shaking fingers. He answered on the first ring, his voice warm and concerned. "Hey babe, everything okay? You left early this morning." "Cut the act, Max," Liv said, her voice deadly quiet. "I know what you did." A pause. Then, with careful neutrality, "What are you talking about?" "The rumors. The anonymous sources feeding stories to the network about me and David." "It was you, wasn't it?" Another pause, longer this time. When Max spoke again, his voice had changed, the warmth replaced by something harder, almost satisfied. "Can you prove it?" The simple question, delivered with such casual cruelty, stole her breath. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this to me? Do you know what it's like?" Max's voice cracked with sudden emotion. "Watching you succeed while I'm still begging for bit parts. Hearing you talk about your big break while I can't even get a call back. 3 years of playing the supportive boyfriend while you climb the ladder. I supported you, Liv protested. I was there for every audition, every rejection. You pitied me. Max spat. I saw it in your eyes. Poor Max, still waiting for his big break. Well, guess what? I just got a call from Warner Brothers. Lead role in their new series. Funny how things work out, isn't it? The revelation hit her like a physical blow. You used my destruction as your stepping stone. I used the truth, Max said smoothly. Or at least, what everyone was willing to believe was the truth. That's what you taught me, isn't it? Every story has an angle. You just have to find the one that sells. Liv ended the call without another word. She sat in the conference room, watching the city bustle below, feeling her world crumble around her. Her phone buzzed with an email from the network's HR department, required meeting, 2 p.m. She knew what was coming. The network would never risk the scandal. They'd bury the story, and her career, under a pile of NDAs and severance papers. 3 years with Max, 10 years in journalism, all destroyed by carefully crafted lies from the man who was supposed to love her. But as she sat there, something shifted inside her. The devastation began to crystallize into something harder, sharper. She was a journalist, trained to uncover truth, to follow leads, to expose corruption. Max had taught her a brutal lesson about trust, but he'd forgotten something crucial. She knew how to investigate, how to document, how to build a case. And she knew his secrets too. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Max, I'm sorry it had to be this way. But you'll land on your feet. You always do. Liv stared at the message, a cold smile forming on her lips. Yes, she whispered to the empty room. Yes, I will. But you won't. She opened her laptop and created a new folder, Project Truth. Inside, she began documenting everything, dates, times, conversations. The real story was about to begin, and this time, she would be the one controlling the narrative. The severance package sat unopened on Liv's coffee table, a manila envelope containing the price of her silence. 3 years of memories surrounded her in the apartment she'd shared with Max, photos she couldn't bring herself to take down yet, his favorite coffee mug still in the dish rack, the worn spot on the couch where he'd run lines for auditions. Each item now felt like evidence in a crime scene, the systematic destruction of her trust. Her phone buzzed with another text from Sarah, please talk to me. We're worried about you. Liv almost laughed. Now they were worried. After participating in her public humiliation, after watching Max systematically dismantle her reputation while pretending to be concerned friends. She'd spent the past week avoiding their calls, using the time instead to piece together a disturbing pattern she'd been too close to see. She opened her laptop to review her notes, organized with the precision of an investigative report. The document had grown extensively since that day in the conference room. October 2022, Max, coincidentally, runs into David Porter at our regular coffee shop. Begins asking about network politics. January 2023, strange comments about my late meetings, subtle accusations about my clothing choices. March 2023, started sharing drinks with Craig after auditions, building rapport with my closest industry contacts. May 2023, suggested I wear more revealing outfits to meetings with executives. Playing the game, he called it. The timeline continued, each entry revealing a calculated move in Max's long game. But it was the videos that truly shook her. She'd found them buried in his cloud storage, acting exercises, he'd called them, but now she recognized them for what they were, rehearsals. Max practicing different versions of the same stories, refining the details of her supposed indiscretions until they rang true enough to destroy her. You're overthinking this, his voice echoed in her memory. Everyone knows how the industry works. I'm just trying to help you understand the game. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Beth shifting nervously in the hallway. "I know you're in there, Liv," Beth called softly. "Please. 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, Liv opened the door. Beth looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence replaced by genuine distress. "I didn't know," Beth blurted before Liv could speak. "I swear to God, Liv, I didn't know what he was planning. He would mention things, little comments here and there, and it seemed to make sense at the time, but now." She thrust a phone toward Liv. "You need to see this." On the screen was a group chat Liv had never seen before, dated months ago. She scrolled through messages between Max and their friends, watching him masterfully plant seeds of doubt about her character, her ambition, her loyalty. Each message was crafted to seem concerned rather than malicious, worried rather than jealous. "He played us all," Beth whispered. "And now he's doing interviews about overcoming adversity and standing up to industry corruption. He's turning your story into his redemption arc." Liv's hands trembled as she opened a recent entertainment news article, "Rising star Maxwell Carter speaks out about industry sexual politics." The photo showed him looking soulfully into the camera, perfectly styled to appear both vulnerable and righteous. "I had to make difficult choices," the article quoted him. "When you witness corruption, staying silent makes you complicit. I couldn't live with that, even if it meant sacrificing personal relationships." "There's more," Beth said, pulling up another article. "Warner Brothers is positioning him as the moral conscience of their new series. The brave whistleblower who risked everything to expose the truth. They're even talking Emmy potential." Something inside Liv shifted, not the hot rage of betrayal this time, but something colder, more focused. She'd been investigating Max's manipulation of her story, but she'd missed the bigger picture. This wasn't just about destroying her career, this was about crafting his origin story, transforming himself from struggling actor to principled hero. "Beth," Liv said quietly, "I need you to tell me everything you remember. Every conversation, every text, every coincidental meeting. And then I need you to help me contact everyone else he manipulated. It's time they knew they weren't the only ones." As Beth began to talk, Liv's fingers flew across her keyboard, documenting each new detail. Max had spent years crafting his performance, but he'd forgotten something crucial about her old reporting days. Before she was an anchor, she'd specialized in exposing long-term fraud. She knew how to follow paper trails, how to connect disparate threads, how to build a case that would withstand scrutiny. Most importantly, she knew that men like Max, drunk on their own success, inevitably made mistakes. Her laptop pinged with a new email, a response from a digital forensics expert she'd contacted. "Found something interesting in the metadata," the message began. "Those practice videos? They're not the only ones he forgot to delete." Liv smiled for the first time in weeks. Max had taught her the power of narrative, how to craft a story that people would believe. Now it was time to tell the true story, not just of her downfall, but of his calculated rise. And this time, she had receipts. The irony wasn't lost on Liv that she now spent her days in the same coffee shop where Max had first begun weaving his web of lies. Each morning, she claimed the corner table, her command center for an investigation that was becoming far larger than she'd initially imagined. "I never thought he was capable of this level of calculation," Marcus said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd been wrestling with his own role in recent events. "The things he said about you. God, Liv, I'm so sorry I believed him." Liv studied her former friend's face, seeing genuine remorse there. The anger that had sustained her through the past weeks softened slightly. "You weren't the only one he fooled," she replied, turning her laptop to show him the spreadsheet she'd compiled. "Look at this." The document contained dozens of names, actors, producers, industry insiders. Each entry documented a similar pattern, Max inserting himself into their lives, gathering information, then using it to advance his career while leaving devastation in his wake. He did this for years, Liv explained, her voice steady despite the weight of the revelation. Before me, there was Jessica Chen, an up-and-coming director. Max dated her for 8 months, learned everything about her upcoming project, then leaked details to a rival studio. They fast-tracked a similar film, destroyed her credibility. She hasn't directed since. Marcus leaned forward, scanning the names. Wait, Thomas Reynolds? The showrunner? Liv nodded. Max befriended him at an industry event, gained his trust, learned about his struggle with anxiety medication. When a crucial position opened up, Max leaked stories about Thomas being unstable. Guess who got recommended as a replacement? Jesus Christ, Marcus whispered. And now he's being hailed as some kind of moral crusader. Liv's phone buzzed, another entertainment news alert about Max. The photo showed him at a charity gala, arm wrapped possessively around his new girlfriend, a rising Warner Brothers executive. His smile held a familiar confidence that made Liv's stomach turn. He's getting sloppy, she said, more to herself than Marcus. Success makes him feel invincible. Look at this. She pulled up a series of recent interviews where Max discussed his brave stand against industry corruption. Each appearance revealed slightly more, his carefully crafted narrative expanding as audiences demanded more details. The thing about pathological liars, Liv continued, is that they can't help embellishing. Each story needs to be bigger, more dramatic. I've been tracking the inconsistencies. She opened another document, this one highlighting contradictions in Max's various accounts. He's so focused on playing the hero, he's forgetting to keep his story straight. Marcus studied the evidence, his expression darkening. What do you need from me? The truth, Liv said simply. Your emails, your texts, any recordings of conversations with Max. I'm building a timeline that proves this wasn't a spontaneous act of conscience, it was a calculated campaign of manipulation. They'll try to discredit you, Marcus warned. They'll say it's just revenge, a scorned woman trying to destroy a rising star. That's exactly what they'll say, Liv agreed, pulling up another file. Which is why I'm not the one who's going to tell this story. Look at these messages I received after Beth started reaching out to other victims. The screen filled with emails, dozens of them, each telling a similar story of manipulation and betrayal. Former colleagues, ex-girlfriends, industry professionals, all sharing their experiences with Max's particular brand of calculated destruction. Their stories are all different, but the pattern is the same, Liv explained. He finds people with potential, people on the verge of success. He gets close to them, learns their vulnerabilities, then uses that information to clear his path forward. Each time, he emerges looking like a hero while leaving wreckage behind. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Beth. Just got out of the meeting with the digital forensics team. You need to see what they found. Liv's hands trembled slightly as she opened the attached files. There, in meticulous detail, was evidence of Max's long game, archived emails, deleted messages, and most damaging of all, video diaries where he bragged about his manipulations. He recorded everything, Liv whispered, a mix of horror and vindication washing over her. He actually documented his own sociopathy. Marcus watched her face carefully. Liv, what exactly are you planning? She closed her laptop, meeting his concerned gaze with steady determination. I'm not planning anything, Marcus. I'm doing what I was trained to do, investigating a story of systematic abuse of power and bringing the truth to light. The only question is, are you ready to help me tell it? The coffee shop hummed with quiet conversation around them as Marcus considered her words. Outside, a billboard caught Liv's eye, Max's face smiling down at the city, promoting his new series. The Truth Teller, the tagline proclaimed without irony. Soon, Liv thought, her resolve hardening. Soon everyone will know exactly what kind of truth you tell. The support group met in a small community center in Queens, far from the gleaming studios and network offices where Liv's life had unraveled. Here, under fluorescent lights that hummed softly overhead, she found something unexpected, a chorus of voices that echoed her own experience. The hardest part wasn't the big lies, Jessica Chen was saying, her fingers wrapped tightly around a paper cup of cooling coffee. It was the small ones. The way he'd rewrite our shared history, make me question my own memories. By the end, I didn't trust my own judgment anymore. Heads nodded around the circle. These weekly meetings had started as part of Liv's investigation, a way to gather testimonies. They'd become something more, a sanctuary where masks could fall, where the carefully maintained facades of professional success could crack to reveal the raw truth beneath. I used to think I was alone, Thomas Reynolds spoke up, his distinguished producer's demeanor softened by vulnerability. That I was somehow uniquely foolish for not seeing through him. But listening to all of you, it's like he had a playbook. He did, Liv said quietly, opening her laptop. And I can prove it. The screen illuminated with a video, Max's face, younger but wearing that same practiced sincerity. He was speaking directly to the camera, the key is to make them think it's their fault. Plant the seeds early. A comment here, a suggestion there. By the time they realize what's happening, they've already accepted the narrative you've created. The room fell silent as more clips played. Max, methodically detailing his strategies. Max, laughing about how easy it was to turn friends against each other. Max, discussing how to identify potential targets, talented people on the verge of success, people whose downfall could create opportunities. Where did you find these? Jessica whispered. He recorded everything, Liv explained. Like it was a master class in manipulation. The digital forensics team found dozens of videos buried in cloud storage, all carefully dated and labeled. He was documenting his techniques, studying what worked and what didn't. We were all just practice runs. Thomas leaned forward, producer's instincts kicking in. This is enough to destroy him. The public would. The public isn't ready yet, Liv interrupted gently. Right now, he's their golden boy, the brave whistleblower. If we come forward individually, we'll be dismissed as bitter, as jealous of his success. But together. She turned to a new document on her screen, a carefully structured narrative featuring multiple voices, documented evidence, and irrefutable proof of systematic manipulation. I don't want revenge, Liv continued, her voice steady. I want recognition, not just for us, but for every person who's been gaslit, manipulated, made to doubt their own reality. This isn't about destroying Max. It's about reclaiming our stories. Beth, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. The network, they've been asking questions. Rumors about Max's past are starting to surface. He's getting nervous, making mistakes. Last week, he gave 3 different versions of the same story to different outlets. I know, Liv said. I've been tracking the inconsistencies. But more importantly, I've been tracking his victims, not just the big names, but everyone. The assistants he charmed into sharing confidential information. The crew members he befriended and betrayed. The casting directors whose trust he abused. Each story is a thread in a larger tapestry of manipulation. She stood, moving to the whiteboard where their shared timeline spread across the wall. Next week, Max is scheduled to give a major interview, a primetime special about speaking truth to power. He thinks it's his crowning moment, his final step into legitimate stardom. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. What he doesn't know is that we've been working with the interviewer for months. Every question is designed to expose the contradictions in his story. And when he inevitably tries to charm his way out, to spin a new narrative. She gestured to the faces around the room. We'll be ready. Not with accusations, but with evidence. Not with anger, but with truth. Our truth. The room hummed with nervous energy. These were people who had been silenced, who had watched their abuser rise to fame while they struggled to rebuild their lives. Now, finally, they had a chance to reclaim their narratives. "It won't be easy," Liv acknowledged. "He'll fight back. He'll try to discredit us, to paint us as a conspiracy of bitter failures. Are you ready for that?" One by one, heads nodded. Jessica squared her shoulders, Thomas straightened in his chair, Beth's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let's begin," Liv said, turning to a fresh page in her notebook. "Tell me your stories, not the versions he made you believe, but the real ones. It's time the world heard the truth." The green room of the National Broadcasting Studio hummed with quiet tension. Liv sat alone, watching the monitor as Max charmed his way through the opening segments of his primetime interview. His new series had just been renewed for a second season, and his carefully crafted image as Hollywood's conscience was at its peak. "You've been called a voice for change in the industry," the interviewer, Catherine Wells, was saying. "Someone who wasn't afraid to expose corruption, even at great personal cost." Max's practiced smile held just the right touch of humility. "Sometimes doing the right thing means making difficult choices. Standing up for truth isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary." Liv closed her eyes, remembering similar words whispered in their darkened apartment. "Sometimes love means making hard choices, babe. I'm just trying to protect you from yourself." The memory no longer brought pain, only a calm certainty about what needed to be done. Her phone vibrated softly. Messages from the support group filled the screen. "We're with you. Jessica. Truth prevails. Thomas. Stay strong. Beth." The interview continued, Catherine's questions becoming gradually more pointed. "You've spoken about witnessing corruption firsthand. Can you tell us more about that?" "Of course." Max shifted slightly, an almost imperceptible tell that Liv recognized. "I saw talented people being pushed aside, careers being built on inappropriate relationships. When I tried to speak up, I faced backlash. Lost friends. But integrity has a price." "Interesting." Catherine's tone remained professional, but her eyes sharpened. "We've been doing some investigation into those claims. Would you mind explaining these?" The studio screens filled with images, Max's video diaries, carefully edited to protect the victims while exposing his methodology. His own voice echoed through the studio. "Find their weakness. Everyone has one. Success, validation, fear of exposure. Once you know what they need, you can become their everything. Then, when the moment's right." The color drained from Max's face as more clips played. His careful manipulations laid bare, his calculated destruction of careers documented in his own words. The final clip showed him laughing about Liv's downfall. She never saw it coming. Too busy chasing her dreams to notice the knife in her back. "But that's how you climb in this town, one stepping stone at a time." "Would you care to comment on these recordings?" Catherine asked quietly. Max's charm cracked, revealing something darker beneath. "This is clearly a hit job. Those clips are taken out of context. I have enemies in this industry, people like Jessica Chin." Catherine interrupted smoothly. "Or Thomas Reynolds. Or perhaps Liv Morgan." The studio doors opened. One by one, they entered, the people whose lives Max had manipulated, whose careers he had damaged in his climb to the top. Not as angry accusers, but as calm witnesses to truth. "This is ridiculous," Max sputtered, but his practiced confidence was crumbling. "You can't believe. We have documentation," Catherine continued. "Emails. Text messages. Witness statements. A pattern spanning years. Would you like to see them?" As evidence filled the screens, irrefutable proof of Max's systematic manipulation, Liv watched from the green room as his carefully constructed world began to unravel. Not with dramatic accusations or emotional confrontations, but with the quiet power of truth finally spoken aloud. Hours later, After the interview had ended and Max had fled the studio, Liv sat in her old coffee shop with Beth and Jessica. The place was nearly empty, the late-night crowd thinned to a few dedicated workers hunched over laptops. "It's already trending," Beth said, scrolling through her phone. "The studio's put his series on hold pending investigation. His agents dropped him. It's over." "No," Liv said softly. "It's not over. It's just beginning." She opened her laptop, showing them the outline of her new project, a documentary series about psychological manipulation in survival, featuring stories of recovery and resilience. Not focused on Max or revenge, but on healing and transformation. "We're not defined by what he did to us," she explained. "We're defined by how we rose above it, how we reclaimed our stories. That's what people need to hear." Jessica smiled, tears in her eyes. "From victims to advocates. From survivors to voices of change," Thomas added, joining them with fresh coffee. Liv looked around at these people who had become more than allies. They were a testament to the power of shared truth, of collective healing. Max had tried to isolate them, to make them doubt their own experiences. Instead, he had inadvertently created a community of strength. The next morning, Liv stood at her window, watching the city wake up. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine, "Ready to tell your story? The real one this time?" She thought about the journey, from ambitious journalist to convenient victim to something else entirely. Something stronger. Not because she had sought revenge, but because she had chosen truth. Not just her truth, but the truth of all those who had been silenced. "Yes," she typed back. "But not just my story. Our story. All of us." The sun rose over the city, painting the buildings in shades of gold. Somewhere out there, other people were wrestling with their own manipulators, doubting their own experiences. Her work, her real work, was just beginning. And this time, she wasn't walking the path alone.